The world up here is so loud, isn't it? It is bright and it is fast and it demands every ounce of your attention. But I want you to imagine a place where the sun has not shone for 100 million years. A place where time doesn't rush. It drifts. Tonight, we are going to leave the noise of the surface behind. We are going to let the heavy, cool weight of the water press down on our shoulders and sink into the deepest, darkest parts of our planet. There are secrets down there. Ancient creatures that move in slow motion and mountains that have never felt the wind. This is the ultimate escape. So get comfortable and let your mind float away from the shore. We are going down to the bottom to see what is hiding in the silence. Chapter 1. The Deception, the Surface. When you stand on a beach and look out at the horizon, your eyes are lying to you. You see a flat, calm blue sheet of glass that stretches on forever. It looks peaceful, it looks quiet, and most importantly, it looks empty. But this is the greatest deception in human history. That shimmering blue surface is not just water, it is a mask. It is a camouflage designed by nature to hide the true face of our planet. We think we know the Earth. We have mapped every inch of our continents, every street in our cities, and we have even mapped the surface of Mars more accurately than our own world. But the truth is, we are only living on the tall, dry mountaintops that stick out of the water. The real world, the true alien landscape of Earth, is hiding right beneath the waves, and if you could peel back that blue layer, you would see a world so violent and massive that it would terrify you. Imagine for a second that we could pull a giant plug at the bottom of the world. Imagine we could drain the ocean completely. As the water level drops, the deception fades away, and the true terrifying geography of Earth is revealed. The first thing you would notice is that the ocean floor is not flat, it is jagged, it is scarred, and it is home to geography that makes our life on the surface look like a miniature toy set. You would see mountains that make Mount Everest look small. You would see valleys so wide they could swallow entire countries. We are taught that the Grand Canyon is the most impressive hole in the ground, but that is simply not true. If the water was gone, you would see canyons that are miles deeper and hundreds of miles longer, cutting through the planet like giant claw marks. This is the world that has been hiding from you your entire life, just a few hundred feet below where you swim. One of the most unsettling examples of this hidden geometry is a place that actually looks like it is staring back at you. If you fly over the coast of Belize, the turquoise water is suddenly interrupted by a perfect dark blue circle. It is called the Great Blue Hole, and it looks exactly like a giant eye. For centuries, sailors avoided it. They thought it was a portal to hell or a home for sea monsters, and in a way they were right to be afraid. This isn't just a hole, it is a massive sinkhole that opens up into the dark crust of the Earth. It is over 400 feet deep and 1,000 feet wide. If you were to dive down into it, the walls are not smooth. They are lined with massive stalactites, huge stone spikes hanging from the ceiling. But here is the crazy part. Stalactites can only form in AR. They cannot form underwater. This proves that this massive cave was once above ground, dry and hollow, before the ocean rose up and swallowed it whole. It is a ghost of a past world, preserved in the dark. But the great blue hole is just a quiet pit compared to the violence happening elsewhere. When we look at the ocean's surface, we see waves crashing. But that is nothing compared to what is happening underneath. Did you know that the biggest waterfall on Earth is not on land? It is underwater. This sounds impossible. How can water fall inside of other water? It comes down to physics and temperature. Between Iceland and Greenland, there is a place called the Denmark Strait. Here, freezing cold water meets warmer water. Because the cold water is denser and heavier, it plunges straight down. It creates a massive silent waterfall that drops 11,500 feet. Let me put that in perspective for you. Angel Falls is the tallest waterfall on land. The underwater waterfall in the Denmark Strait is 3 times taller than Angel Falls. It carries more water in a single second than the Amazon River. And it has been flowing for thousands of years, completely invisible to us, hidden perfectly beneath that deceptive blue mask. We also assume that the bottom of the ocean is just sand and mud. But if you drain the water, you would see the longest mountain range in the solar system. It is called the mid-ocean ridge. It wraps around the Earth like the seam on a baseball. It is 40,000 miles long. It is a chain of active volcanoes and jagged peaks that literally rips the planet apart to create new crust. If this mountain range was on land, it would be the most famous landmark on Earth. It would be visible from space. But because it is covered by the blanket of the ocean, most people live their entire lives without ever knowing it exists. We walk around thinking the Earth is solid and static, but just below the waves, the planet is constantly ripping itself open, bleeding lava and creating new ground in total darkness. This serves as a reminder of how little we actually see. We are visual creatures. We trust our eyes. But when it comes to the ocean, our eyes are useless. The light of the sun can only penetrate a tiny fraction of the water. The rest, the other 95%, is a world of eternal blackness. The surface is just the lobby of the hotel. It is the only part the guests are allowed to see. But the basement? The basement is where the machinery is. The basement is where the structure is kept alive. And the geography we have just imagined, the towering underwater waterfalls, the eye-like sinkholes, the jagged scars of the trenches, this is just the stage. A stage needs actors. A house needs residents. We have spent the last few minutes looking at the rocks, the cliffs, and the water itself. We have stripped away the mask to see the face of the planet. But rocks do not breathe. Canyons do not hunt. The most terrifying thing about the ocean isn't the fact that it is deep, or that it is dark, or that it is massive. The most terrifying thing is that despite the crushing pressure, despite the freezing temperatures, and despite the total lack of sunlight, something is moving down there. The landscape is alien, yes. It is hostile to human life. But it is the perfect playground for things that do not follow our rules of biology. We are about to leave the rocks behind. We are about to turn on the lights in a room that has been dark for millions of years. The geography is impressive, sure, but the landscape isn't the scary part. It's what lives just beneath this layer that starts the real mystery. Chapter 2. The Twilight Zone, 1,000 meters. As we sink past the 200-meter mark, we are officially crossing a border. We are leaving the human world behind and entering a realm that scientists call the mesopelagic zone, but you probably know it by its more haunting name, the Twilight Zone. If you look up towards the surface, that familiar bright blue ceiling is fading. The sun, which gives life to everything we know on land, is powerless here. Its rays are dying, absorbed by the crushing weight of the water above us. The color around you shifts from a vibrant turquoise to a deep, bruising indigo, and finally into a heavy, suffocating grey. It is the color of a storm that never ends. You are now entering the beginning of an endless night. This is the point of no return. Down here, the ocean is no longer a playground. It is a pressurized tomb where the rules of biology are rewritten by darkness. In this realm, eyes are more valuable than gold. Because the sunlight is vanishing, the creatures here have evolved into something that looks like it belongs in a science fiction nightmare. They do not just reflect light, they hunt for it. Evolution has forced life to adapt in impossible ways. Imagine trying to survive in a forest that's perpetually pitch black, where you cannot see the predator standing 3 feet in front of you until its teeth are already in your skin. That is the reality of the Twilight Zone. To survive here, animals have developed a superpower that seems like magic to us on the surface. It is called bioluminescence. This is not a chemical reaction you see in a lab. This is living light. Because the sun has abandoned them, the animals here have decided to become their own stars. Suddenly, out of the murky grey darkness, you see a flash, then a pulse, then a glow. It is a biological disco in the deep. Some creatures use this light to scream for help in silence. Others use it as a lure, a trap to bring curious victims closer to their jaws. But the most terrifying use of this light is for camouflage. It sounds contradictory. How do you hide by glowing? It is called counter-illumination. Predators swimming below look up, expecting to see the faint shadow of prey against the dying light of the surface. But the prey matches the brightness of the surface water, rendering them invisible. They erase their own shadows. They become ghosts. But amidst these flashing lights and ghostly shadows, there is one creature that defies all logic. It is the absolute king of the weird, a biological riddle that baffled scientists for decades. Drifting slowly through the gloom is a fish that looks like a melancholic cartoon character. It is called the barrel-eye fish. At first glance, it looks almost normal, until you turn on your flashlight and look at its face. The front of its face has 2 small holes that look like eyes. But they are not eyes. They are its nostrils. Its real eyes are actually inside its head. The barrel-eye fish has a skull that is completely transparent. It is made of a clear, fluid-filled shield that lets us look directly into its brain case. Inside this glass cockpit, there are 2 glowing green orbs. These are the eyes. And they are not looking forward. They are looking up. The barrel eye spends its entire life staring through its own skull, watching the water above it, scanning for the faint silhouette of prey drifting overhead. It is a creature designed with a built-in windshield. The green pigment in those internal eyes acts like a pair of high-tech night vision goggles, filtering out the confusion of the gloom to spot the slightest movement. To see the barrel eye is to realize that nature has an imagination far darker than ours. It is a living machine, a surveillance drone of the abyss, built solely to spy on the shadows above. Why does a creature need a see-through head? Why does it need eyes that rotate inside its skull like gun turrets? It is because down here, one mistake means death. The barrel eye steals food from stinging jellyfish, maneuvering its transparent head through toxic tentacles, confident that its eyes are safely behind a shield. It is a level of adaptation that feels alien. If we found this creature on one of Jupiter's moons, we would say it fits perfectly. But it isn't in space. It is right here, sharing our planet, swimming in the dark while we sleep. The twilight zone is a place of deception. Things are not what they seem. The nostrils are not eyes. The shadows are not empty. The darkness is not dead, it is watching you. We are currently floating at roughly 1,000 meters deep. The pressure is growing intense. The temperature is dropping near freezing. The last photon of sunlight has officially vanished. We are now in total absolute blackness. We have seen fish with transparent heads and animals that glow like neon signs. But there is a pattern here that you might have missed. The barrel-eye fish is strange, yes. The glowing shrimp are bizarre, yes. But they have one thing in common. They are small. They are the size of your hand or your foot. They are the insects of the ocean. But biology has a strange rule. When you take away the light, and you increase the pressure, and you stretch out the timeline of evolution, things change. The deeper we go, the stranger the energy becomes. We are leaving the zone of the small, glowing oddities. We are descending into the realm where the water pressure forces bodies to grow large, strong, and terrifying. We thought the transparent head of the barrel eye was the peak of the mystery. We were wrong. These creatures are strange, but they are small. As we go deeper, the things we find get much, much bigger, and they are hungry. Chapter 3. The Giants, 3,000 meters. We are now crossing the 1,000-meter line. We have left the twilight zone behind, and we are free-falling into the bathypelagic zone, better known as the midnight zone. If you thought the transparent heads and glowing lures of the layers above were strange, you are not prepared for what lives here. In the surface world, nature follows a simple rule. If you want to get big, you need a lot of food. Elephants need mountains of grass, blue whales need tons of krill. But down here, where food is scarce and temperatures are near freezing, biology breaks its own rules. We are entering the realm of deep-sea gigantism. For reasons scientists still struggle to fully understand, the crushing pressure and the bitter cold trigger a terrifying reaction in animal physiology. In the midnight zone, life does not shrink to survive the harsh conditions. It explodes in size. It grows monstrous. Small crabs become the size of tables. Isopods, which are usually tiny bugs, grow to the size of footballs. And the predators? The predators grow into the stuff of nightmares. For thousands of years, humans have told stories about the ocean that we assumed were fake. Vikings whispered tales of the kraken, a beast with arms as thick as tree trunks that could reach up from the abyss, wrap around the hull of a ship, and drag the entire crew down to a watery grave. We laughed at these stories. We told ourselves that these sailors were drunk or tired or simply hallucinating after months at sea. We arrogantly believed that we had catalogued the world's megafauna. We thought the biggest things on Earth were elephants and whales, animals we could see and touch. We were wrong. The kraken was not a myth. It was a warning. It was our ancestors trying to tell us that something intelligent, something massive, and something hostile was living just beneath our boats. We now know this creature as Architeuthis dux, the giant squid. For centuries, the giant squid was a ghost. We knew it existed only because of the grisly evidence it left behind. We would find dead, rotting carcasses washed up on beaches 40 feet long with eyes the size of dinner plates. We would see massive circular scars carved into the skin of sperm whales, battle wounds from fights that happened miles underwater where no human could see. But we had never seen one alive. It became the holy grail of marine biology. Think about that. A carnivore the size of a school bus was swimming in our oceans, hunting and breeding, and we could not find it. It was a master of evasion. It was a ghost in the machine. That is, until 2012. That year changed everything. A team of scientists decided to stop hunting the squid with loud engines and bright lights, which only scared the monsters away. Instead, they used a stealth camera and a lure that mimicked the bioluminescence of a panicked jellyfish. They lowered it into the blackness off the coast of Japan and waited in the silence. After hundreds of hours of staring at empty black screens, something finally emerged from the gloom. It didn't rush in like a mindless beast. It approached with a chilling metallic grace. The footage they captured sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The giant squid was not just a clumsy blob of meat, it was pure muscle. It was coated in silver and gold skin that flashed in the dark. Its eyes, the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, were staring right at the lens with an intelligence that was undeniable. It touched the camera tentatively, testing it before exploding into an attack. Watching that footage, you realize that the ocean is not empty. It is filled with titans that have been ruling the dark long before humans learned to walk upright. This animal has a beak that can snap steel cables and razor-sharp suckers that can strip the flesh off a whale. And it is down there right now, silently gliding through the midnight zone, waiting for something to touch its tentacles. But the giant squid is not the only legend that turned out to be real. If the squid is the monster of the deep, the next creature is its ghost. Occasionally, travelers in the deep ocean report seeing a long, shimmering ribbon floating vertically in the water. It looks like a stream of liquid silver. This is the oar fish, and it is responsible for almost every sea serpent sighting in history. These creatures can grow up to 50 feet long. That is the length of a semi-truck trailer. They do not swim like normal fish. They undulate, rippling through the water like a ribbon in the wind. They are beautiful, but they are also terrifying omens. In Japanese folklore, the oarfish is known as Ryugu no Tsukai, which translates to the messenger from the sea god's palace. According to ancient legends, these fish live in the deepest parts of the ocean, near the roots of the world. The legend says that they only come up to the surface to deliver a warning. They are believed to be harbingers of earthquakes. For years, science dismissed this as superstition. But recently, seismologists have started to wonder if the legends are true. Deep-sea creatures are incredibly sensitive to vibrations. It is entirely possible that the oarfish can feel the tectonic plates grinding together days before a massive quake releases its energy. When the pressure builds in the fault lines, the oarfish flee toward the surface in a panic. So, if you are ever swimming in the ocean, and you see a magnificent 30-foot silver dragon floating next to you, do not marvel at its beauty. Run. It might mean the ground is about to shatter beneath your feet. We are now floating at 3,000 meters. The pressure here is enough to crush a car into a soda can. We have seen the giant squid, the real-life kraken that battles whales. We have seen the oarfish, the serpent that predicts disaster. We have proven that the monsters in our storybooks are actually real animals living in the shadows. But there is a disturbing thought that keeps marine biologists awake at night. The giant squid is huge, yes. The oarfish is long, yes. But they are biological. They have limits. We thought these were the kings of the deep. We thought we had reached the limit of how big a living thing could get. But then we turned on the microphones. We dropped hydrophones, underwater listening devices, thousands of miles apart, trying to listen for whale songs or submarine engines. Instead, we picked up a sound that shouldn't exist. It was a low-frequency groan that traveled across the entire Pacific Ocean. It was too organic to be a bomb. It was too rhythmic to be an earthquake. It sounded like a voice. But for a voice to travel that far, the lung capacity of the creature would have to be impossible. We thought the giant squid was the king of the deep. But then we heard a sound that was too big for any squid to make. Chapter 4. The Unexplained Sounds. The Bloop. We have explored the visual horrors of the deep. We have looked at the monsters that have teeth and the landscapes that look like alien planets. But we have made a critical mistake. We have been relying on our eyes. The ocean is not just a place of darkness, it is a place of sound. In the deep ocean, light dies after a few hundred meters, but sound is immortal. Sound travels 5 times faster in water than it does in air. It can travel for thousands of miles without losing its energy. Because of this, the US Navy and scientific organizations have spent decades lining the bottom of the ocean with sensitive microphones called hydrophones. Originally, these were designed to track Soviet nuclear submarines during the Cold War. They were listening for engines. They were listening for torpedoes. But in the summer of 1997, the microphones picked up something that had no engine, no propeller, and no metal hull. They picked up a sound that shouldn't exist. It happened in the remote, desolate waters of the South Pacific, a place so far removed from human civilization that it might as well be on the moon. The hydrophones were listening to the static of the ocean, the background hum of currents and distant storms. Suddenly, the needles on the recording devices jumped. A massive, low-frequency sound wave washed over the sensors. This wasn't a short snap or a bang. It was a long, groaning undulation that lasted for over 1 minute. But here is the part that terrified the analysts. This sound was not picked up by just one microphone. It was picked up by sensors that were 3,000 miles apart. To give you an idea of how insane that is, imagine standing in New York City and screaming so loud that someone in Los Angeles could hear you clearly. That is the kind of power we are talking about. Whatever made this noise was not just loud. It was the loudest sound ever recorded in the history of the ocean. Scientists immediately began to analyze the audio profile. They called it the bloop. When you listen to the original recording, it is an ultra-low frequency rumble, almost too low for the human ear to hear. But when scientists sped up the audio to make it audible for us, it took on a terrifyingly familiar shape. It sounded like a bubble. It sounded like a drop of water hitting a pond, but magnified by 1 billion times. It sounded organic. And this is where the mystery turned into fear. Biologists looked at the waveform, the visual shape of the sound. It didn't look like a bomb explosion, and it didn't look like an underwater volcano. It looked like the voice of a living animal. The frequency rose and fell in a way that mimicked the call of a whale. But the math didn't add up. The math was impossible. We know what the loudest animal on Earth is. It is the blue whale. A blue whale can grow to 100 feet long, and its call can travel for hundreds of miles. It is the absolute limit of biological engineering. But for a biological sound to travel 3,000 miles with that much intensity, the creature making it would have to dwarf a blue whale. Based on the calculations, the animal responsible for the bloop would need to be at least 250 to 300 feet long. That is 3 times the size of the biggest dinosaur that ever walked the earth. It would be a predator the size of the Eiffel Tower, submerged in the water. For years, cryptozoologists went wild. They pointed out a chilling coincidence. The source of the bloop was triangulated to a point in the South Pacific that was only a few hundred miles away from the fictional sunken city of R'lyeh, the home of the monster Cthulhu in H.P. Lovecraft's horror stories. It seemed like fiction was bleeding into reality. For years, the bloop stood as the single greatest piece of evidence that a leviathan was hiding in the abyss. The public was captivated. We wanted it to be a monster. We wanted to believe that there was a god-sized creature swimming in the dark. But then the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, stepped in to kill the dream. After years of analysis, and after deploying more sensors to the Antarctic, they released a new theory. They announced that the bloop was not a creature. They claimed it was an ice quake. They explained that when massive icebergs in Antarctica crack and carve off the glacier, they generate massive low-frequency sounds that can travel across the entire ocean. The ice drags along the sea floor, groaning and snapping with the force of millions of tons of frozen water. It makes sense, it is logical, it explains the volume, and it explains the location. The scientific community let out a sigh of relief. The monster wasn't real, it was just ice. The mystery was solved. Or was it? Even today, there are many acoustic experts and marine biologists who are not fully satisfied with the icequake explanation. While ice does make loud noises, ice usually sounds violent. It sounds like cracking, grinding and friction. Ice is chaotic. But if you look at the spectrogram of the bloop, it has a smooth, rising frequency. It has the signature of a controlled release of air. It mimics the vocalization of a marine mammal almost perfectly. A block of ice does not have lungs. A block of ice does not have a throat. And perhaps most disturbingly, since 1997, we have recorded other sounds that defy explanation. We have heard the Julia, a sound that sounds like a woman cooing from the deep. We have heard the train, a sound that resembles massive machinery gears grinding on the ocean floor. The ocean is a noisy place, and we are only just learning how to listen to it. We are like children pressing a glass against the wall, trying to hear what the neighbours are doing next door. We might be hearing the house settling or the pipes creaking. That is what the scientists tell us. They tell us it is just the geology of the planet shifting. They tell us it is just ice breaking in the dark. But when you listen to that sound again, that deep, rhythmic, rising bubble, it is hard to shake the feeling that we are listening to a heartbeat. It is hard to shake the feeling that something massive woke up in 1997, screamed into the void, and then went back to sleep. Scientists say it was ice, but many listeners think the sound was too organic, too rhythmic, and it isn't the only sound down there. Chapter 5. The Lost History. Shipwrecks. We have spent the time terrified of what nature has created in the dark. We have looked at giant squids, glowing aliens, and sounds that defy explanation. But the ocean is not just a monster factory. It is also a graveyard. It is the largest, quietest and most expensive museum on planet Earth. But it is a museum with the lights turned off, and the exhibits are not safe behind glass. They are rotting away in the crushing blackness. When a ship sinks, we think of it as lost. We say it has vanished. But nothing in the ocean truly vanishes. It just moves to a place where we are not welcome. Down here, amongst the mud and the sludge of the abyssal plain, history is preserved in a way that is both beautiful and deeply disturbing. And right now, the most famous shipwreck in human history is in the middle of a slow, agonizing second death. Everyone knows the story of the RMS Titanic. In 1912, the unsinkable ship hit an iceberg and fell 12,500 feet to the bottom of the Atlantic. For 73 years, it sat there in total darkness, hidden from the world, until it was found in 1985. When we first lit it up with our submersibles, it looked majestic. It was a ghost ship sitting upright on the sand. But if you visit the Titanic today, it looks very different. It is melting. The ship is being consumed by a microscopic monster that was discovered specifically on this wreck. It is a bacteria called Halomonas titanici. This bacteria loves one thing: iron. It is literally eating the steel hull of the Titanic, bite by microscopic bite. As the bacteria digests the metal, it forms these long, fragile structures that look like icicles made of rust. Scientists call them rusticles. They drape off the railings and the hull like melting wax on a dying candle. Every single day, this bacteria consumes hundreds of pounds of the ship. The iconic captain's bathtub? Gone. The crow's nest? Gone. The gymnasium? Collapsed. Scientists estimate that within the next 20 to 30 years, the Titanic will not be a ship anymore. It will be nothing but a rust stain on the ocean floor. The ocean is reclaiming its prize. This serves as a grim reminder. In the deep, nothing made by humans is allowed to last forever. The ocean will eventually eat everything we drop into it. But while the Titanic is dissolving, other ships are hiding in places so deep that we only just found them. The Titanic sits at 12,500 feet. That is deep. But in the Pacific Ocean, there are graves that make the Titanic look shallow. During World War II, the fighting didn't just happen on islands. It happened over the deepest trenches on Earth. And recently, explorers located the deepest shipwreck ever found. It is the USS Johnston. This destroyer didn't just sink, it was sent to the very bottom of the world. It rests over 20,000 feet down in the Philippine Trench. To put that in perspective, if you put the Titanic on the bottom, you would still have to stack almost 2 miles of water on top of it to reach the USS Johnston. At 20,000 feet, the pressure is immense. It is enough to pulverize bone. It is enough to snap titanium. And yet, when the submersible lights hit the USS Johnston, it wasn't a rusted pile of scrap. It was eerily intact. The lack of oxygen and the extreme depth have preserved it like a time capsule. You can still see the hull numbers painted on the side, 557. You can see the gun turrets still rotated, pointing towards an enemy that vanished 80 years ago. It is a frozen moment of violence. This ship fought one of the bravest battles in history, charging at massive Japanese battleships to save its fleet, and now it sits alone in the eternal night, deeper than any human was ever meant to go. It is a lonely, silent sentinel guarding the abyss. But the most haunting part of these shipwrecks isn't the steel. It isn't the guns or the propellers or the anchors. It is the traces of the people who went down with them. The ocean has a strange way of filtering out biology. At these depths, scavenger animals and high pressure dissolve human bones very quickly. Skeletons disappear. Bodies turn to dust. But the ocean cannot eat everything. There is one specific material that the deep ocean refuses to digest: tanned leather. The chemicals used to treat leather for shoes and suitcases make them toxic to bacteria. So, when you glide a camera over the debris field of the Titanic, you don't see bodies. You see shoes. You see a pair of men's heavy work boots lying side by side in the mud, perfectly arranged. You see a pair of women's high heels, still upright. You see a tiny pair of child's shoes. These are not just random debris. These are the tombstones of the deep. These shoes are laying exactly where a person landed when they hit the bottom in 1912. The body inside them decomposed and dissolved decades ago, but the shoes remain, marking the final resting place of a human soul. It is a visual that hits you harder than any ghost story. It is a silent testament to the cold, preserving power of the deep. And then there are the dolls. Porcelain does not rot. Plastic does not rust. In shipwrecks all over the world, divers have found children's dolls lying face up in the silt. Their painted eyes are still bright, staring blankly into the flashlight beams. Their smiles are still frozen on their faces. It is a heartbreaking contrast, an object of innocent joy trapped in a place of crushing death. These objects, the shoes, the dolls, the suitcases, remind us that the ocean floor is not just a geological feature. It is a repository of human grief. It holds our secrets, it holds our mistakes, and it holds them in a stillness that feels almost supernatural. When we look at a shipwreck, we feel a sense of tragedy, but we also feel a sense of logic. We know what a ship is. We know why it is there. We know that gravity pulled it down. It makes sense. It fits into our understanding of the world. A ship is a human object in a natural world. But as we scan the ocean floor, looking for these lost vessels, our sonar sometimes picks up shapes that do not make sense. We find straight lines in a world of curves. We find geometric angles in a world of chaos. We find things that look like they were built, but not by shipwrights. We are about to leave the known history of the 20th century behind. We are about to look at rocks that shouldn't exist. Shipwrecks are tragic, but there are structures down here that don't look like ships. They look like cities. Chapter 6. The Underwater Cities, Yonaguni and Cuba. We have explored the graveyard of ships where steel giants like the Titanic are slowly dissolving into the mud. We understand shipwrecks. They fit into our version of history. We know that humans build ships, and sometimes those ships sink. It is tragic, but it is logical. But what happens when we find something on the ocean floor that doesn't fit? What happens when we point our sonar at the bottom of the sea and we don't see the curved organic shapes of nature, and we don't see the scattered debris of a broken boat, Mum? But instead we see geometry. We are about to enter the most controversial chapter of ocean exploration. We are about to look at the lost cities of the deep. These are places that science says should not exist. These are anomalies that suggest the timeline of human history might be wrong. Our journey begins in the shallow waters off the coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni. In 1987, a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake went into the water looking for hammerhead sharks. He wasn't looking for history, he was looking for wildlife. But as the current pushed him around a massive rock formation, he saw something that made his heart stop. It wasn't a shark. It was a massive stone wall. But it wasn't just a wall. As he swam closer, he realized he was looking at a massive, singular structure that looked like a stepped pyramid. It was huge, about 160 feet long and 65 feet wide, and it was absolutely covered in sharp, precise, right angles. This is the Yonaguni Monument, and it is the center of a furious debate that has divided the scientific world for 30 years. When you look at the footage of Yonaguni, your brain immediately screams, "Humans built this!" You see what looks like a grand staircase leading up to a plaza. You see flat, smooth terraces that look like a stage for a ceremony. You see two massive pillars standing side by side, perfectly vertical. Nature is messy. Nature likes curves. Rivers bend, trees twist, and rocks erode into round shapes. Nature does not typically create sharp 90-degree corners over and over again in the same place. Yet at Yonaguni the corners are as sharp as the edge of a table. The believers look at this and see the ruins of a lost civilization. They point out specific features that seem impossible to explain geologically. There is a section called the Loop Road, a pathway that circles the structure. There is a formation that looks exactly like a carved turtle. There are even markings on the stone that look like tool marks, as if a wedge was driven into the rock to split it. If this was built by humans, the implications are mind-bending. The last time this area was above water was during the last ice age, roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. That would make Yonaguni twice as old as the pyramids of Egypt. It would mean that while we are taught humans were simple hunter-gatherers living in caves, someone, somewhere, was engineering massive stone cities. It would rewrite the entire first chapter of human history. But the skeptics, the geologists, have a different explanation, and it is equally fascinating. They argue that this is a masterpiece of nature's violence. They explain that the rock at Yonaguni is sandstone, which naturally fractures along straight lines. They argue that thousands of years of earthquakes and strong currents have cleaved the rock, breaking off layers in perfect sheets, creating the illusion of steps and terraces. They say it is a Rorschach test. We see a city because we want to see a city, just like we see faces in the clouds. They claim nature is playing a trick on our eyes. But even the skeptics admit, if this is natural, it is one of the most bizarre geological freaks on the planet. However, if Yonaguni is a riddle we can solve by swimming down to it, the next mystery is one we cannot touch. We have to travel to the other side of the world, to the deep waters off the coast of western Cuba. In 2001, a marine engineer named Paulina Zelitsky was scanning the ocean floor. She wasn't looking for Atlantis. She was working for the Cuban government, looking for sunken treasure ships. But her side-scan sonar picked up something that made no sense. At a depth of 2,200 feet, half a mile down, the sonar painted a picture of a massive flat plain. And rising out of this plain were distinct, symmetrical, geometric shapes. The images were grainy, but they were undeniable. They showed large white structures arranged in a pattern. Some of them looked like pyramids. Others looked like rectangular buildings. And they were huge. The layout looked like an urban center. It looked like a city. But the depth makes this impossible. Yonaguni is shallow. It could have been dry land during the Ice Age. But 2,200 feet deep? For that area to be dry land, you would have to go back 50,000 years, or maybe even more. Geologically, that land should not have been above water since the dawn of modern humans. When the news broke, it was a sensation. National Geographic planned an expedition. The world was ready to find the real Atlantis. And then, silence. The expedition was cancelled. The funding dried up. We never went back with cameras. We never sent a robot down to touch the stones. The sunken city of Cuba became a ghost story. Critics say it was just sonar noise or piles of fallen rocks. But the experts who saw the raw data said the symmetry was too perfect. Nature doesn't build city blocks. Nature doesn't arrange rectangles in a grid. This leaves us with a haunting question. The ocean covers 70% of our planet. Civilization has existed for thousands of years. Is it possible that the cradle of civilization isn't in the desert of Iraq or the valleys of Egypt, but sitting silently on the continental shelves that were flooded when the ice melted? We treat the ocean as a wilderness, but maybe it is actually a ruined hard drive, holding data we have forgotten how to read. Whether Yonaguni is a natural trick or a forgotten temple, and whether Cuba is a glitch or a metropolis, they both prove one thing. The ocean floor is alien to us. We look at these shapes and we don't know if we are looking at geology or archaeology. We want to believe that we are the masters of this planet. We want to believe we know our own past. But the ocean is a thick blue curtain that has been pulled over the truth. If those rocks in Cuba are buildings, then everything we know is wrong. If the terraces in Japan are carved, then our ancestors were giants of engineering long before we invented the wheel. The ocean is hiding the truth in the one place we cannot easily look. If ancient humans didn't build these, then nature is playing a cruel trick on us. But nature has one more trick that scientists only discovered this year. Chapter 7. The Dark Oxygen Discovery. New for 2024-2025. Everything you learned in science class is wrong. That is a bold statement, but it is the only way to describe the discovery that rocked the scientific world in 2024. Since elementary school, we have been taught one absolute, unbreakable rule of biology. Oxygen comes from photosynthesis. We are taught that plants, trees, and algae soak up sunlight and use that energy to release oxygen into the air. It is the engine of life. It is the reason we can breathe. And according to this rule, in the deep ocean, where there is zero sunlight, oxygen should be impossible to create. In the deep, oxygen is only ever consumed by animals. It is never created. For hundreds of years this was considered a fact. It was a law of physics. But in 2024, a team of scientists working in the Pacific Ocean discovered that the Earth has been keeping a secret from us. We were wrong. The ocean floor does not need the sun to breathe. It is making its own dark oxygen. The discovery happened in a place called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, a massive stretch of the Pacific Ocean between Hawaii and Mexico. It is an abyss sitting 13,000 feet below the surface. A team led by Professor Andrew Sweetman was sending robot landers down to the mud to measure how the animals down there were breathing. They expected the oxygen levels to slowly drop as the sea creatures used it up. That is what always happens. But when the data came back, the scientists were confused. the oxygen levels didn't drop. They went up. The sensors were showing that something down there in the pitch-black darkness was pumping oxygen into the water. At first, the scientists refused to believe it. They thought their equipment was broken. They thought the sensors were glitching. Professor Sweetman actually sent the sensors back to the manufacturer to get them recalibrated, telling them, "Your machines are giving us impossible numbers." This denial went on for 10 years. They kept seeing the data and they kept ignoring it because it violated the laws of science. But finally, in 2024, they decided to trust the numbers. They realized that they weren't looking at a glitch. They were looking at a planetary phenomenon that no human had ever seen before. The deep ocean floor is actually producing oxygen. So, how is this possible? How can you make oxygen without sunlight? The answer lies in the rocks. The floor of the Clarion-Clipperton Zone is not empty mud. It is covered in billions of little black rocks that look like dirty potatoes. These are called polymetallic nodules. For decades, we thought they were just boring lumps of geology. But when scientists looked closer, they realized these rocks are packed with rare metals like cobalt, nickel, and manganese. And when you put these metals into salt water, something incredible happens. They start to act like batteries. The scientists discovered that these abyssal potatoes are electrically charged. When they tested the surface of the nodules, they found a voltage of almost 1.0 volts. That is almost the same charge as a standard AA battery you would put in your TV remote. But here is where it gets crazy. When these rocks are clustered together on the sea floor, touching each other, they act like a battery pack connected in a series. The voltage can jump up to 1.5 volts or higher. And in seawater, 1.5 volts is the magic number. It is enough electricity to trigger a process called electrolysis. This is a natural chemical reaction where electricity literally rips water molecules apart. A water molecule is H2O, 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. The electric charge from these rocks splits the molecule, releasing the hydrogen and freeing the oxygen. This means that for millions of years, these rocks have been sitting in the dark, silently buzzing with electricity, bubbling out oxygen into the deep sea. We call it dark oxygen. It turns out the ocean floor is a massive planet-sized battery that is breathing life into the abyss. This discovery changes everything. First, it changes how we view the history of life on Earth. We used to think that life began in shallow pools where sunlight could reach. But if the deep ocean has its own oxygen source, complex life could have started in the pitch black, millions of years before photosynthesis even existed. It means the roots of our family tree might be much deeper than we thought. But the second implication is even more shocking. It is about aliens. When astronomers look for life on other planets, they usually ignore the frozen ice moons like Europa, orbiting Jupiter, or Enceladus, orbiting Saturn. They ignore them because those moons are covered in miles of ice that block out the sun. We assumed that without sunlight, their oceans would be dead and suffocating. But we know those moons have rocky cores and saltwater oceans. If the process of dark oxygen works on Earth, it works everywhere. It means those dark, frozen alien oceans could be filled with oxygen-generating rocks. And where there is oxygen, there can be animals. This discovery has just blown the door wide open for finding intelligent life in our own solar system. However, there is a dark side to this discovery. A terrifying conflict is coming. Do you remember those metals I mentioned? Cobalt? Nickel? Those are the exact same metals we need to build batteries for electric vehicles and smartphones. The world is desperate for these metals. Mining companies are currently fighting for the right to send massive bulldozers down to the Clarion-Clipperton zone to harvest these rocks. They want to scoop up the potatoes to power our Teslas and iPhones. But now we know the truth. These rocks are not just rocks. They are the lungs of the deep ocean. If we dredge them up, we are essentially ripping the batteries out of the ecosystem. We might suffocate the entire midnight zone. The animals that live down there, the ghosts, the jellies, the squids, might depend on this dark oxygen to survive. If we take the rocks, the lights go out and the air runs out. We are standing on the edge of an ecological disaster because we didn't know how the planet worked until a few months ago. This is why ocean exploration is so critical. We are making plans to destroy an environment we haven't even finished understanding. We thought the bottom of the ocean was a dead, static place. But it is alive. It is electric. It is bubbling with energy that creates the very air that sustains life. It forces us to ask a question that haunts marine biologists. If the ocean floor can create its own air, what kind of life is using it? The answer is in the abyss. Chapter 8. The Abyssal Plain. We have descended past the twilight. We have survived the midnight zone. We have seen the monsters that hunt in the water column. But now we are landing. We are reaching the floor of the world. We are entering the abyssal plain. This is not just a location. It is the single largest habitat on planet Earth. It covers more than 50% of our planet's surface, yet it is a place that almost no human eyes have ever seen. When you picture the Earth, you picture green continents and blue water. But that is a lie. The real face of the Earth is this: a flat, grey, endless wasteland of mud that stretches on for thousands of miles in every direction. It is a desert of silt, sitting in eternal silence, crushed by water and frozen in time. If you were standing here, looking out into the gloom, you would feel smaller than you have ever felt in your life. You are a microscopic speck in an infinite room of darkness. The ground here is not made of sand. It is made of ooze. That is the scientific term. It is a thick, silty sludge made up of the remains of trillions of dead creatures that have slowly drifted down from the surface over millions of years. We call this constant drift marine snow. It looks like white flakes falling in a winter storm, but it is actually biological debris, dead plankton, fish scales, and dust. This snow is the only food source for this entire world. It is a graveyard that feeds the living. And because food is so scarce, the landscape looks empty. But it is not empty. It is hiding the most disturbing creature to ever evolve in the history of our planet. If you are lucky, or unlucky enough to be driving a rover across this flat grey plain, your headlights might catch something standing in the distance. It is not swimming. It is hovering. It is perfectly still, suspended in the black water like a statue. It looks like a daddy-long-legged spider mixed with a ghost. This is the big-fin squid, also known as the magna pinna, and it is the stuff of nightmares. When we think of squids, we think of animals that dart around, change colours, and move quickly. The big-fin squid does none of those things. It drifts, it waits. It has 8 arms and 2 tentacles, but they are not like normal squid arms. They are incredibly long and thin, trailing down into the darkness for up to 26 feet. But the part that makes your skin crawl is the elbows. The arms of the big-fin squid do not curve naturally. They stick out sideways from its body and then bend abruptly at a sharp 90-degree angle, dangling straight down. It looks artificial. It looks like a marionette puppet with its strings cut, or a broken alien machine that has been discarded in the deep. Why does it look like this? Why does it have elbows? We don't know. We have never caught one. We have never studied one in a lab. We have only seen them on grainy video feeds from oil rig cameras and deep-sea rovers. In every video they are doing the same thing. Nothing. They just hang there, staring into the void with massive, soulless eyes. Scientists believe they use their long, sticky tentacles to drag across the muddy floor, snagging anything that moves, like a living drift net. The big-fin squid is a reminder that down here, evolution does not care about looking normal. It only cares about survival. And in the abyssal plane, survival requires patience. This brings us to the strangest quality of the abyssal zone, the distortion of time. On the surface, life is fast. We run, we burn energy, we age, and we die. But down here, the water is near freezing, and the pressure is immense. Resources are so low that animals cannot afford to burn energy. So biology hits the brakes. Life moves in slow motion. The metabolism of the creatures here drops to almost zero. They are not just living, they are existing in a state of suspended animation. Because they live so slowly, they die slowly. We have found clams in the abyss that are over 500 years old. We have found corals that have been growing since the Egyptian pyramids were being built. If you were to watch a sponge on the abyssal plane, you might have to wait 100 years just to see it grow an inch. This is a land of immortals. These creatures are ancient watchers, silent witnesses to history. While wars were fought and empires rose and fell on the surface, these animals were sitting in the exact same spot, in the exact same mud, doing absolutely nothing. This extreme slowness creates an atmosphere that is hard for the human mind to comprehend. It is a place of absolute stasis. Nothing changes here. If you dropped a wrench on the abyssal plane today and came back in 10,000 years, it would likely be sitting in the exact same spot, perhaps covered in a light dusting of marine snow. The abyssal plane is a time capsule. It preserves the history of the earth in its layers of mud. But despite the stillness, despite the vast emptiness, and despite the alien horror of the big-fin squid, this is not the end of our journey. We are currently at a depth of roughly 4,000 to 6,000 meters. The weight of the water above us is crushing. It is terrifying. But the Earth has scars. The smooth, flat plain we are driving across is about to end. Ahead of us, the ground is dropping away. The flat mud is cracking open into a deep, jagged V-shape that plunges into the crust of the planet. We are leaving the abyssal plain. We are about to enter the Hadal zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. Most people think the bottom of the ocean is 12,000 feet deep. They are wrong. We have only just reached the edge of the cliff. The pressure here is already unbearable. To give you an idea, imagine an elephant. Now imagine that elephant is balancing on one leg. Now imagine that elephant is standing on your thumb. That is the weight pressing against the hull of our submarine right now. It is enough to implode a standard submarine in a millisecond, turning it into a crumpled ball of metal before the crew even realizes they are dead. But we are not stopping. We are going deeper. We are almost at the bottom. The pressure here is like an elephant standing on your thumb. But there is one place deeper. Chapter 9. The Hadal Zone. The Trenches. We have now reached the edge of the known world. We have crossed the flat, muddy wastelands of the abyssal plain. And suddenly, the ground beneath us vanishes. We are staring into a massive, jagged scar cut deep into the crust of the earth. This is the Hadal Zone. The name comes from Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. And that is exactly what this is. It is the realm of the dead. It is the Forbidden Zone. We are entering the Mariana Trench, and specifically a small V-shaped valley at the very bottom called Challenger Deep. This is the deepest point on our entire planet. To understand where we are, you have to destroy your sense of scale. Forget skyscrapers, forget cities. Think about Mount Everest. Everest is the tallest point on Earth, reaching 29,000 feet into the sky. It is the limit of human endurance. But if you were to cut Mount Everest off at the base, turn it upside down and shove it into the Mariana Trench, the tip of the mountain would still be underwater. You would still have over 1 mile of water above the peak. That is how deep we are. We are 7 miles down. The distance from the surface to the bottom is the same as the cruising altitude of a commercial airliner. But instead of thin air, we are surrounded by a crushing wall of water. The pressure outside our hull is now 16,000 pounds per square inch. To put that in perspective, imagine having a stack of 50 jumbo jets resting on top of a person. That is the weight pressing against every single inch of this submarine. If the window were to crack, the water would rush in so fast, moving at the speed of an explosion, that it would incinerate everything inside instantly. And yet humans are crazy. We didn't just look at this place, we decided to go there. The year was 1960. We had not even been to the moon yet, but 2 men, Jacques Picard and Don Walsh, climbed inside a tiny steel sphere called the Trieste. This wasn't a high-tech submarine like we have today. It was basically a metal balloon filled with gasoline for buoyancy. As they began their slow 4-hour freefall into the dark, The temperature inside the sphere dropped to freezing. They sat shivering in the dark, eating chocolate bars to stay warm, watching the depth gauge spin. But when they reached 30,000 feet, deeper than anyone had ever gone, disaster struck. A loud, violent crack echoed through the tiny sphere. The entire ship shook. Picard and Walsh looked at each other in terror. They scanned the walls. They scanned the window. They found the source. The thick plexiglass viewing port had fractured under the immense pressure. A hairline crack had appeared. They were miles underwater, alone in a leaking metal ball. Logic dictated that they should abort the mission. They should have dropped their weights and shot back to the surface. But they didn't. In a moment of pure human insanity and bravery, they decided to keep going. They trusted the physics. They trusted the machine. They continued the descent into the blackness, listening to the hull groan under the weight of the ocean. When they finally landed with a soft thud, 35,797 feet down, they turned on the exterior lights. They expected to see a dead world. Scientists at the time had told them that life was impossible at this depth. They said the pressure would turn bones to jelly and stop hearts from beating. They said the water was stagnant and lifeless. But as the silt cloud settled, Picard and Walsh looked out the cracked window and saw a miracle. Swimming gracefully through the spotlight was a flatfish. It looked like a sole or a flounder. A few moments later, they saw a shrimp. The scientific community was stunned. Not only was there life, but it was complex life. These animals had evolved to withstand pressure that would crush a nuclear submarine. Their bones are not made of calcium like ours. They are made of flexible cartilage. Their cells are packed with special proteins that stop their fluids from freezing. It proved that life is stubborn. It proved that no matter how hostile the environment, nature will find a way to conquer it. We looked at the bottom of the world and found that we were not alone. For decades, we didn't go back. It was too expensive, too dangerous. But in recent years, explorers like James Cameron and Victor Vescovo have returned to the bottom with high-definition cameras. They wanted to see what else was hiding in the trench. They wanted to find new monsters, new geology, and new secrets. But in 2019, Victor Vescovo steered his submarine to the deepest pool of Challenger Deep, looking for the pristine, untouched wilderness of the Earth. He found something, all right, but it wasn't a monster, and it wasn't a rock. Lying in the dirt at the deepest point on planet Earth, 36,000 feet away from the nearest human being, was a plastic bag. It was a punch to the gut. It was a candy wrapper. It was a piece of trash. We realized with horror that there is no part of this planet that we have not touched. We think of the ocean as this vast, unconquerable force, but we have managed to poison it before we even finished exploring it. That plastic bag had traveled through currents, drifted down for years, and settled in a place where sunlight has never touched, to sit there for eternity. It is a heartbreaking monument to our civilization. We expected to find aliens. Instead, we found our own garbage staring back at us. This discovery changes the tone of the entire journey. We started this dive looking for mystery, for magic, for the unknown. We found giant squids and glowing lights. We found underwater waterfalls and electric rocks. But at the very bottom, we found a mirror. The trench is not just a geological feature, it is a trash can. It is a sobering reminder that everything flows downhill. The microplastics from your face wash, the wrapper from your lunch, it all ends up here, in the stomach of a shrimp that lives 7 miles down. But do not let this dishearten you completely, because even though we found plastic, we also found something else. In the samples of mud brought back from the trench, scientists found DNA. Weird DNA. Microbial DNA that doesn't match anything we have on record. The plastic is there, yes, but so is the unknown. The trench is a place of contradictions. It is a place of crushing violence and total silence. It is a place of pristine life and human pollution. We have polluted the bottom before we even finished exploring it. But the trench might have one final secret left. Chapter 10, The Final Frontier, Conclusion. We have returned to the surface, the pressure has lifted, the sunlight has returned. We are back in the world of blue skies, fresh air and solid ground. But as we look out over the waves, the ocean looks different now. It is no longer just a flat sheet of water. We know what is down there. We have taken a journey that, mentally at least, very few humans ever take. We have descended through the layers of the deception, past the twilight, into the midnight, across the abyssal plain, and into the crushing darkness of the trenches. We have seen the monsters. We have seen the ruins. We have seen the garbage. But here is the most unsettling thought of all. Despite everything we just saw, despite the giant squids and the underwater waterfalls, we have seen nothing. We have explored less than 5% of our own ocean. That is a statistic you hear all the time. But let's actually think about what it means. It means that 95% of the living space on our planet is a total blank slate. Imagine if you walked into your house, but you were only allowed to see the front door mat. You had never seen the kitchen, the bedrooms, the basement or the attic. You would have no idea who lived there, what they ate, or what secrets they were hiding. That is our relationship with Earth. We are strangers in our own home. We have mapped the surface of Mars with higher resolution than we have mapped our own ocean floor. We know the craters of the Moon better than we know the geography of the Pacific. The maps we use in schools show the ocean floor as this smooth, sandy basin. That is a lie. Those maps are just guesses. They are placeholders for the unknown. Think back to the things we have found. We found the barrel-eye fish, a creature with a transparent skull that looks like a biological spaceship. We found dark oxygen, a discovery made only this year that completely shattered the laws of photosynthesis. We found polymetallic nodules, rocks that act like batteries powering the deep. These are not small discoveries. These are things that rewrite textbooks, and we found them by accident. This leads to a staggering realization. If we found these impossible things in the 5% we have looked at, what is hiding in the other 95%? The ocean is an infinite generator of novelty. It is a biological lottery that never stops spinning. Here is a fact that should keep you excited. Almost every single time we send a deep-sea rover down to the abyss, we bring back a new species. Every single time. We are not just finding new bacteria, we are finding new sharks, new squids, new jellies, and new crabs. Science estimates that there are over 2 million marine species that we have never named, never photographed, and never seen. They are swimming down there right now, living out their entire existence in the dark, completely unaware that humans even exist. This total ignorance leaves the door open for the myths. Because we cannot see the bottom, our imagination fills in the gaps. And there is one modern myth that refuses to die. It is the legend of the Ningen. In the 1990s, rumors began to circulate among Japanese whaling ships and research vessels in the Antarctic. Sailors reported seeing something in the distance. It wasn't a whale. It wasn't a seal. They described a creature that was massive, over 20 to 30 meters long. They said it was stark white, and terrifyingly, they said it had a shape that looked human. The descriptions are chilling. They say the Ningen has a smooth, blubbery body, but instead of fins, it has limbs. It has arms. It has hands with 5 fingers. Some reports say it has legs that fuse into a tail like a mermaid. Others say it walks on 2 legs along the sea floor. But the worst part is the face. Sailors claim it has no distinct features, just 2 large gaping eyes and a slash for a mouth. Is the Ningen real? Scientifically, probably not. It is likely a misidentified beluga whale, or a trick of the light on an iceberg, or simply a sailor's hallucination born from exhaustion. But can we be 100% sure? No, we cannot, because we have not been there. We found the giant squid only 10 years ago. We found the coelacanth, a fish we thought went extinct with the dinosaurs, alive and well in 1938. The ocean loves to prove us wrong. The Ningen represents the fear that something intelligent, something that looks like a twisted reflection of us, is sharing this planet, hidden by the curtain of the deep. This brings us to the great irony of the human race. We are obsessed with the stars. We spend billions of dollars building rockets. We train astronauts to survive in the void. We point massive radio telescopes at distant galaxies, desperate to hear a beep or a signal that proves we are not alone. We are looking for aliens. We are looking for Plan B. We dream of terraforming Mars, a dead radioactive rock, into a place where life can survive. We are desperate to find a second Earth. But we already have a second Earth. It is right here. It is underwater. The deep ocean is more alien than Mars. The creatures there survive in conditions that would kill an astronaut in seconds. They breathe rock. They communicate with light. They live for centuries. They are the true extraterrestrials, and they are living in our basement. We ignore the ocean because it is scary. Space is empty, it is a vacuum. But the ocean? The ocean is thick, it is heavy, it is alive. It triggers a primal fear in our brains that says, do not go there. But we must go there. The ocean is not just a place of fear, it is a library. Locked in the mud of the abyssal plain is the history of our planet. every meteor impact, every volcanic winter, every shift in the climate is recorded in the layers of sediment. And the DNA of the creatures down there might hold the secrets to curing diseases, or extending human life, or understanding how life begins in the universe. We are destroying this library before we've even read the first book. We are filling the trenches with plastic and mining the sea floor for battery metals. We are treating the unknown as a resource to be exploited rather than a mystery to be respected. The journey we took today was a simulation. We sat safely behind our screens. But the real journey is just beginning. The next generation of explorers will not be looking up at the moon. They will be looking down at the Ring of Fire. They will be the ones to finally shine a light on the Ningen, or whatever else is waiting in the 95%. As we finish this video, I want you to walk outside next time you're at the coast. Look at the water. Don't look at the waves on top. Look through them. Imagine the cliffs dropping away. Imagine the crushing blackness. Imagine the silence. And remember that we are small. We are temporary. The ocean was here long before us, and it will be here long after we are gone. It is the keeper of secrets. The ocean is not just water. It is a timeline of our past, and perhaps a warning for our future. We keep looking up at the stars for aliens. Maybe we should be looking down. What do you think is the scariest thing down there? The giant squids or the pitch-black darkness? Let me know in the comments.